The cold air bit at Dae-hyun's face as he stepped outside the convenience store. It was 2 in the morning and Gangnam Station was almost empty. His shift would end in 4 hours, but he needed a break. The fluorescent lights inside gave him headaches, and the silence of the night shift made time move slower. He lit a cigarette and leaned against the wall. His fingers were numb even through his gloves. Winter in Seoul was always harsh, but this year felt colder. Maybe it was because he couldn't afford to heat his tiny room properly. Maybe it was because his mother's hospital bills kept growing. Maybe he was just tired. That's when he saw her. A small girl, maybe 8 years old, standing alone near the subway entrance. She wore strange clothes that shimmered under the streetlights like they were made of metal thread. The fabric caught the light in ways that didn't look quite right. Her hair was dark and messy, and she kept turning in circles, looking at everything with wide, confused eyes. Dae-hyun watched her for a moment. People walked past without stopping. A businessman hurried by, talking on his phone. 2 students laughed together, not even glancing her way. The girl looked more lost with each passing second. He dropped his cigarette and walked toward her. "Hey," he said softly, kneeling down to her level. "Are you okay? Where are your parents?" The girl looked at him with eyes that seemed too old for her face. She said something in Korean, but the words came out stiff and formal like she was reading from a textbook. "I am far from home. I do not know this place. What's your name?" Dae-hyun asked. "Nari," she said. Then she added, "I am cold." Dae-hyun could see her shivering. Those strange clothes looked thin despite their weird shimmer. He took off his jacket without thinking and wrapped it around her shoulders. It was too big, swallowing her small frame, but at least it was warm. "Where do you live? Do you have a phone?" Nari shook her head. She clutched something small and metallic in her hand, pressing it close to her chest like it was precious. "I cannot call them. I'm alone here." Dae-hyun felt his heart squeeze. What kind of parents let their child wander around at 2 in the morning? "Okay, listen. We should call the police. They'll help you find your family." "No!" Nari grabbed his arm and her grip was surprisingly strong. Real fear filled her eyes. "Please, no police, please." The terror in her voice made him pause. His phone was already halfway out of his pocket, but something stopped him. Maybe she was running from something. Maybe she had reasons to be afraid. He'd heard stories about bad families, about kids who ran away from danger. "All right," he said gently. "No police. But you can't stay out here. It's freezing and it's not safe." Nari's shoulders relaxed slightly. She looked up at him with those strange, too knowing eyes. "You will help me?" "Yeah," Dae-hyun said. "I'll help you." He thought about taking her inside the store, but his manager would ask questions. He thought about taking her to his room, but that felt wrong. Instead, he walked her to a bench near the store where he could still see the entrance. If his manager came looking, he could run back. "Wait here," he told her. He went inside and bought 2 cups of hot chocolate with his own money. His wallet felt lighter afterward, but the smile on Nari's face when he handed her the warm cup made it worth it. They sat together on the cold bench. Nari held the hot chocolate with both hands, letting the heat warm her fingers. She took small sips and made a face at the sweetness like she'd never tasted anything like it before. "Where are you from?" Dae-hyun asked. "Very far," Nari said. She stared at the steam rising from her cup. "So far that words are difficult. I came here to understand something." "Understand what?" "People," she said simply. "How they act when no one is watching, how they choose." Dae-hyun didn't understand, but he figured she was traumatized or maybe developmentally different. Some kids talked in riddles when they were stressed. "Well, you chose a cold night to understand people. Most of them are sleeping." "Not you," Nari said, looking at him. "You are working. You are tired. But you stopped. You're a kid alone in the cold." "Of course I stopped." "Many did not stop," Nari said quietly. "Many saw me. They walked away." Dae-hyun had no answer for that. He knew she was right. He'd seen it too, people passing by without a glance. Maybe they assumed someone else would help. Maybe they didn't want to get involved. Maybe they just didn't care. "Tell me about your home," he said, trying to change the subject. "What's it like?" Nari's face softened. "Cold, very cold, but beautiful. We have lights in the sky that dance. And everyone knows everyone. Not like here where millions live together but alone." They talked for 3 hours. Dae-hyun told her about his mother, sick in the hospital. About his dreams of being a teacher before money got tight. About the stray cat he fed behind his building. Nari listened to everything with complete attention, like every word mattered. She told him strange things in return, about places where water floated in the air, about sounds that made colors, about feelings she didn't have words for in Korean. Daehyun listened and nodded, not understanding but not judging either. Whatever she'd been through, she needed someone to listen. Around 5 in the morning, Nari leaned against his shoulder. Her breathing slowed and deepened. She'd fallen asleep, one small hand still clutching that metallic device. Daehyun sat very still, not wanting to wake her. His shoulder went numb, but he didn't move. The sky started to lighten. Pink and orange spread across the horizon. Daehyun felt his own eyes getting heavy. His shift would end soon. He needed to figure out what to do with Nari. Maybe in the daylight. With more people around, he could find help. He blinked, fighting sleep. When he opened his eyes again, Nari was gone. He jerked upright, looking around frantically. The bench was empty except for him. His jacket lay folded neatly where she'd been sitting. On top of it was the metallic device she'd been holding, and a small piece of paper. Daehyun picked up the paper with shaking hands. The handwriting was perfect, too perfect, like it was printed. It said in Korean, "Thank you for your kindness. You will understand soon." He looked at the device. It was smooth and warm, about the size of his palm with no buttons or seams. Lights flickered deep inside it like stars seen through thick glass. Daehyun sat there as the sun rose, holding the device and wondering if he'd dreamed the whole thing. But his jacket still smelled like hot chocolate, and the device in his hand was very real. He filed a report with the police that morning describing Nari as best he could. They took notes but didn't seem hopeful. Lost children usually turned up, they said, or they didn't. Seoul was a big city. Daehyun went home and put the device in a drawer. But he couldn't stop thinking about the little girl with the old eyes who spoke in riddles and disappeared with the dawn. He didn't know that his life had just changed forever. He didn't know that on a ship high above Earth his actions were being analyzed and debated. He didn't know that he'd just passed a test that would determine the fate of his entire species. All he knew was that he'd helped a lost child on a cold night, expecting nothing in return. And somehow that simple act would echo across the stars. 3 days passed like they always did. Daehyun worked his shifts, slept when he could, and tried not to think about the strange girl. But late at night, when the store was empty and quiet, his mind kept returning to her. Those weird clothes, that formal way of speaking, the way she vanished without a trace. The police called once to say they had no leads. No missing child matched Nari's description. No parents had reported anyone lost. It was like she never existed at all. "You probably scared her off," his friend Taejin said over cheap soju one evening. They sat in Daehyun's tiny room, barely bigger than a closet. Taejin was a delivery driver, always tired, always complaining about his bike. "Kids are weird." She probably ran back home and made up some story about where she was. "Maybe," Daehyun said, but he didn't believe it. His other friend Mirai laughed. She was an artist who sold paintings at the subway station, never making enough to pay rent on time. "You're too soft-hearted, Daehyun. That's your problem. You care too much about strangers. Is that a bad thing?" he asked. "In this world?" "Yes," Mirai said, but she smiled when she said it. "But don't change. People like you are rare." They drank and talked until late, then Taejin and Mirai left. Daehyun cleaned up the bottles and lay down on his thin mattress. The device Nari left sat on the small shelf above his head. Sometimes he took it out and held it, feeling its strange warmth. It never did anything, just sat there glowing faintly from inside. Life continued. Daehyun worked double shifts when he could. The extra money went to his mother's hospital bills. She had lung problems from working in a factory for 30 years. The doctor said she needed medicine that insurance didn't cover. So Daehyun worked and saved and tried not to think about how tired he was. On his way to work, he always stopped to feed the stray cat behind his building. It was an old orange tom with torn ears and a missing eye. Most people kicked at it or ignored it. Daehyun brought it scraps from the convenience store, things that would be thrown away anyway. "Hey, old man," he said, setting down a small plate of fish. The cat approached cautiously, always watching for danger. "Rough night?" The cat ate without answering, but its tail flicked once. Daehyun took that as a thank you. He also helped his neighbor, an elderly woman named Mrs. Park, carry her groceries up 4 flights of stairs. She always tried to pay him, and he always refused. "You're a good boy," she said, her wrinkled hands patting his arm. "Your mother raised you right. These small acts felt normal to Daehyun. They weren't special. They were just things you did because you could. Because someone needed help and you were there. He never thought anyone was watching. He never thought it mattered beyond the moment, but he was wrong. Strange things started happening on the second day. Daehyun noticed people watching him. Not obviously, but he caught glimpses. A woman in a business suit who stood too still on the subway platform. A man reading a newspaper at the convenience store who never turned the page. Their eyes followed him, and something about their gaze felt wrong. Too steady, too focused. When he looked directly at them, they looked away. But slowly, like they were machines calculating the correct response time. Their movement seemed slightly off, like actors who hadn't quite learned the part. Am I being paranoid? Daehyun asked Taejin during a phone call. Probably, Taejin said. You work too much. Get some sleep, maybe that was it. Maybe exhaustion was making him see things that weren't there. Daehyun tried to ignore it and focus on work, but the device started acting strange too. On the third night, while Daehyun was restocking shelves, he heard a soft humming sound from his bag. He pulled out the device and nearly dropped it. Light swirled inside it faster than before, and the surface felt warm like skin. The humming grew louder. Daehyun looked around the empty store, heart pounding. Should he throw it away? Call someone? But who would he call? Who would believe him? The device suddenly projected a beam of light upward. Daehyun jumped back, knocking over a display of instant noodles. The light formed shapes in the air, symbols he didn't recognize. They shifted and changed, cycling through what looked like different languages. Then they settled into Korean characters. Observation complete. Judgment rendered. Prepare for contact. The message hung in the air for 3 seconds, then vanished. The device went dark and silent. Daehyun stood there, breathing hard, surrounded by scattered packages of ramyun. What the hell, he whispered. His hands shook as he picked up the device. It looked normal again, just a smooth piece of metal. But Daehyun's world had just tilted sideways. Observation, judgment, contact with whom? He thought about throwing the device away, but something stopped him. Curiosity, maybe. Or the feeling that he'd stepped into something much bigger than himself. The rest of his shift passed in a blur. Every customer looked suspicious. Every sound made him jump. When dawn finally came and his replacement arrived, Daehyun practically ran out of the store. He walked home through streets beginning to fill with morning traffic. His mind raced with questions. Was Nari real? Was any of it real? Maybe he was having some kind of breakdown from stress and lack of sleep. But the device in his pocket felt very solid, very real. As he turned onto his street, Daehyun noticed the strange watchers again. 3 of them this time, standing at different points along the block. The woman from before, 2 men in identical gray coats. They weren't even trying to hide now. Daehyun stopped walking. His heart hammered in his chest. Should he run? Confront them? Call the police? Before he could decide, the world went silent, not quiet. Silent. Completely, utterly silent in a way that felt wrong. Daehyun turned around slowly. Everything had stopped. A car sat frozen in the middle of the street, its wheels suspended off the ground like someone hit pause on reality. A woman walking her dog stood perfectly still, 1 foot raised mid-step. A leaf hung in the air, not falling, not moving. Even the dog didn't move, mouth open in a bark that made no sound. Rain had started falling. Individual drops hung in the air like glass beads, creating a curtain of frozen water. Daehyun reached out and touched a raindrop. It was solid, cold, suspended impossibly. His finger passed through it and the drop shattered into smaller pieces that also hung in the air. This isn't real, he said out loud. His voice sounded flat, absorbed by the stillness. This isn't happening, but it was happening. The device in his pocket began to vibrate. Daehyun pulled it out and it blazed with light, bright enough to hurt his eyes. Then the light came from above. A beam of white brilliance descended from the gray sky, cutting through the frozen rain. It touched down on the street 10 meters in front of Daehyun. The light was so bright he had to shield his eyes, but he couldn't look away. 3 figures materialized in the beam. Tall, taller than any human. They had the basic shape of people, but their skin glowed with soft light, patterns of blue and silver moving across it like slow lightning. Their eyes swirled with colors that had no names, shifting constantly. They wore clothes that looked like liquid metal. The central figure stepped forward. Daehyun couldn't tell if it was male or female. It raised one hand in what might have been a greeting. When it spoke, Daehyun heard the words in Korean, but he could tell that wasn't the original language. The voice sounded layered, like multiple people speaking at once. Daehyun of Earth, do not be afraid. We mean no harm. I am Envoy Coordinator Ishara of the Galactic Collective. We have been watching you. We have been watching your entire species. The time has come for you to understand why. Daehyun's legs felt weak. He sat down hard on the frozen street, still clutching the device. What are you? An answer, Ishara said, to a question your species has asked for thousands of years. You are not alone in the universe. And you, Daehyun, have just changed the course of galactic history. The frozen world spun around him. Daehyun looked at the alien beings, at the suspended rain, at the impossible light. His simple life of convenience store shifts and hospital visits and instant noodles suddenly felt very far away. I don't understand, he said. You will, Ishara replied. But first you must know about the test. The test you passed 3 days ago, when you helped a lost child on a cold night. Daehyun stared at the alien being called Ishara. His mind struggled to process what he was seeing. This couldn't be real. Aliens weren't real. And if they were real, they didn't just appear on a street in Seoul in freeze time. The test? He managed to say. What test? Ishara tilted her head in a gesture that was almost human. May I show you?
It will be easier than explaining with words. Before Daehyun could answer, Ishara touched his forehead with one glowing finger.
The world exploded into light and information. Images flooded his mind. He saw Earth from space, blue and beautiful. He saw ships in orbit, dozens of them, hidden from human eyes. He saw aliens of different shapes and sizes, all watching his planet like scientists observing an experiment. He saw millions of tests happening across Earth, in every country, every city. He saw Nari, but not as a little girl. He saw her true form, a young alien with silver skin and large eyes being trained for her mission. He felt her nervousness, her fear. The test required her to experience real emotions, real distress. She couldn't pretend. She had to actually be lost and cold and scared. And he saw himself through her eyes, saw himself approach when others walked past, saw himself kneel down, take off his jacket, buy hot chocolate with money he couldn't spare, saw himself sit on a cold bench for 3 hours, missing his break, just to keep a strange child company. The images faded. Daehyun gasped for air, his head spinning. That was the compassion protocol, Ishara said. A test we use for all species before we consider contact. We send our people, disguised as vulnerable members of your species, into situations where they need help. Then we observe how your people respond. Why? Daehyun asked. His voice sounded weak even to himself. Because compassion is rare in the galaxy, Ishara said simply. Most species that reach the stars do so through competition and conquest. They survive by being strong, ruthless, efficient. Caring for the weak gets bred out of their culture. They help others only when it benefits them. Only when someone is watching. Only when there is a reward. One of the other aliens stepped forward. This one's skin patterns were darker, more red than blue. I am Counselor Vekran. What Ishara tells you is truth. We have evaluated 473 species. Most show help rates of 15 to 30%, and most who help expect payment or recognition. How did humans score? Daehyun asked, though part of him wasn't sure he wanted to know. Ishara's swirling eyes seemed to brighten. We conducted 10,047 tests over 3 years. In 73% of cases, humans offered help. Of those who helped, 94% expected nothing in return. Daehyun blinked. Is that good? Vekran made a sound like grinding stones. It is unprecedented. Only one other species in collective history scored above 50%. The Karathi, whose entire civilization is built on shared responsibility and collective care. They are considered the moral heart of the collective. And you, Ishara said, looking at Daehyun, your specific case was remarkable. You gave warmth when you were cold. You gave money when you had little. You gave time when you were exhausted. You stayed with a stranger for 3 hours, asking nothing, gaining nothing. You even risked trouble by not calling authorities when the child requested it, trusting her fear over protocol. Daehyun felt his face heat up. She needed help. That's all. Exactly, Ishara said softly. That is all. And that is everything. The third alien spoke for the first time, voiced like wind through metal. This one speaks truth without knowing its weight. Observe the simple phrase, she needed help. Not I could get a reward, not people were watching. Not she might help me later. Simply she needed help. As if that alone is sufficient reason. It is sufficient reason, Daehyun said, confused. Why wouldn't it be? The three aliens exchanged looks. Ishara made a gesture and the frozen world around them shimmered. Suddenly, Daehyun wasn't standing on his street anymore. He was inside something vast and technological, with walls that glowed and curved in impossible ways. Where am I? He asked, fighting panic. Our observation ship in orbit above your city, Ishara said. I want to show you something, to help you understand what your compassion means. She waved her hand and a wall became transparent, showing a view of space, but not empty space. Ships filled the view, hundreds of them, each one different in design. Some looked like crystals, others like living things, still others like buildings that had learned to fly. The Galactic Collective, Ishara said, 473 member species, 12,000 inhabited worlds, an alliance that has lasted 3,000 of your years. It's beautiful, Daehyun whispered. It is practical, Vekran corrected. We did not come together out of friendship or mutual care. We came together because we nearly destroyed each other. Multiple species developed weapons that could end all life. So we formed the collective not from unity but from fear. We maintain peace through contracts and deterrence, not trust. Ishara nodded. Cultural exchange is minimal. Each species keeps to itself. We trade resources and technology, yes. We follow rules to prevent war, yes. But we do not truly connect. We do not truly care about each other. She turned to Daehyun. Until your species was evaluated, we did not realize how unusual this was. We thought compassion was a weakness that evolution would remove from any successful species. We thought caring for strangers was inefficient and foolish. But we were wrong, the third alien said. Humans forced us to question our assumptions. Your people help each other constantly, even at personal cost. You save strangers from burning buildings. You donate organs to people you will never meet. You cry at the suffering of individuals on the other side of your planet. You even cry for animals, for plants, for the idea of things dying. Daehyun thought about the stray cat, about Mrs. Park with her groceries, about the homeless man he let warm up in the convenience store last week. Doesn't everyone do that? No, Ishara said firmly. That is what you do not understand. In the collective, we help those who can help us back. We save those who have value to our society. We care for family and clan, but not strangers. The idea of sacrificing for someone completely unknown, someone who offers no benefit, someone who might not even be of your species. This is deeply strange to us, Vekran stepped closer. There is debate now, fierce debate. Some in the collective want to immediately uplift your species, give you technology, bring you into the collective as full members. They see human compassion as a counterbalance to more aggressive species. They hope you will civilize the galaxy. Others want to isolate your planet, the third alien said. Quarantine you and let you develop naturally for another 1,000 years. They fear your compassion will make you victims, that ruthless species will exploit your kindness, that you will be destroyed by your own soft hearts. And a third faction, Ishara said quietly, wants to study you more, to see if human compassion can survive contact with the greater galaxy, to see if it is truly strength or merely ignorance of how cruel the universe can be. Daehyun felt overwhelmed. He was just a convenience store worker. He helped a lost kid. Now aliens were talking about the fate of Earth. Why me? He asked. Why are you telling me this? Because you and others like you must choose, Ishara said. She gestured and 3 more humans appeared in the room. They looked as confused and scared as Daehyun felt. A woman in doctor's clothes, middle-aged and tired-looking. A man in factory worker's uniform, muscular and weathered. A young woman in student clothes can't be more than 20. This is Hyejin, Ishara said, gesturing to the doctor. She found an elderly collective agent disguised as a human, collapsed on a street in Busan. She carried them 6 blocks to her clinic and treated them for free, then drove them home in her own car. She gestured to the factory worker. This is Bongsik. He encountered a collective agent disguised as a hungry homeless person in Incheon. Bongsik gave them his own lunch, all he had for his 12-hour shift, and went hungry. Finally, she gestured to the young woman. This is Soman. She found a collective agent disguised as an injured student in Daegu. She walked with them for 5 kilometers to reach a hospital, missing her exam, failing a class she needed to graduate. The 4 humans looked at each other. Daehyun saw his own confusion mirrored in their faces. Each of you sacrificed something, Ishara said. Comfort, food, time, future opportunities. You gained nothing. You expected nothing. You simply helped because help was needed. This is what we wish to understand. This is what the galaxy has forgotten if it ever knew. What do you want from us? Hyejin asked, her voice steady despite her obvious fear. A choice, Ishara said. We can return you to Earth with your memories suppressed. You will live normal lives while humanity develops naturally. You will never know this happened. Or, Daehyun asked, or you become ambassadors, Vekrin said. You help us prepare humanity for contact with the collective. You teach us about human compassion while learning about galactic reality. You become the bridge between your world and the stars. Soman laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. This is insane. Yesterday I was studying for exams. Now aliens want me to be an ambassador? Yes, Ishara said simply. We chose you because you represent what is best in humanity. Your small acts of kindness echo what millions of humans do every day. You are not special. You are typical. And that is what makes you remarkable. To the ship's walls shifted and changed around them. Daehyun felt a moment of dizziness, then found himself standing in what looked like a classroom. Seats arranged in a circle, screens floating in the air showing images and data. Soft light coming from everywhere and nowhere. The four humans sat down slowly. Hyejin kept touching things like she couldn't believe they were real. Bongsik stared at his hands, breathing carefully like he was trying not to panic. Soman had tears running down her face, though she didn't seem sad, just overwhelmed. Daehyun understood. His own mind felt stretched thin, trying to contain too much impossibility. Ishara stood in the center of the room. Let me show you our history, so you understand what humanity is walking into. The screens came alive with images, worlds burning, ships firing weapons that tore space itself, cities crumbling, billions dying. 3,000 years ago, Ishara said, the galaxy was at war. 7 major species had developed faster than light travel. Each believed they were superior, destined to rule. Each expanded aggressively, taking worlds, enslaving others, destroying those who resisted. The images showed horrors. Worlds stripped of resources until they were dead rocks. Species worked to extinction. Children turned into soldiers. Entire solar systems used as weapons. We nearly destroyed everything, Vekrin said, his voice heavy. My people, the Vethrians, developed a weapon that could collapse a star. Your people, Ishara, the Quarren, created a plague that could sterilize a planet. The Drexians built ships that could crack worlds like eggs. Stop, Hyejin said, her face pale. Please stop showing us this, the images froze. Ishara looked at her with those swirling eyes. This is the galaxy you wish to join. This is the reality we live with. The violence stopped not because we learned compassion, but because we learned fear. We formed the collective to prevent mutual extinction. The first treaty, the third alien said, stepping forward. I am Speaker Torin of the Korathi. My people mediated the peace. We convinced the warring species that cooperation was more profitable than destruction. We created the collective as a contract, not a community. New images appeared. Species sitting at tables, signing agreements. Trade routes being established. Borders being drawn. Military forces standing down but not disbanding. For 3,000 years we have maintained this peace, Torin said. We trade technology and resources. We follow protocols and laws. We do not fight openly, but we do not truly trust each other. We do not truly care what happens to other species. Soman raised her hand like she was in school. But you have all this technology. You can travel between stars. Surely you've evolved past violence. Vekrin made that grinding stone sound again. It took Daehyun a moment to realize it was laughter. Evolve past violence? Child, we have simply made violence more efficient. Watch. The screens showed a collective patrol encountering a ship of refugees. The refugees were fleeing a natural disaster, their world dying from a solar flare. They begged for help, for rescue, for sanctuary. The patrol calculated the cost of rescue versus the strategic value of the refugees. The calculation took 3 seconds. Then the patrol left. The refugee ship was not seen again. This is normal, Vekrin said flatly. This is how the collective operates. We help when it benefits us. We ignore when it doesn't. The refugees had no resources, no technology to trade, no military value. Therefore, they had no value at all. That's horrible, Daehyun said. That is efficient, Vekrin replied. Resources are limited. Time is limited. We cannot save everyone, so we save those worth saving. Who decides who's worth saving? Bongsik asked, his voice rough. Markets, usually, Ishara said. Or strategic analysis, or political calculation. Value is measured in what can be gained. But not compassion? Hyejin asked. Compassion is not measurable, Vekrin said. It produces no profit. It wins no wars. It advances no agendas. Most species in the collective view it as a primitive emotion, left over from pack bonding instincts, something to outgrow. Torin made a sound like wind chimes. Not all species. My people, the Karathi, maintain strong collective responsibility. We care for all in our society from birth to death. We share resources. We help the weak, but only within your species, Ishara said gently. You care for Karathi, not for others. Torin's glow dimmed slightly. This is true. We have compassion, but it is limited, bounded. We do not extend it to strangers of other species unless there is reciprocal benefit. The screens changed again, showing different scenarios. A collective medical team that charged refugees for emergency care, a species whose planet was failing slowly, but the collective delayed aid because the cost-benefit analysis took years. A child of a minor species orphaned by war, who was left to die because adopting them violated regulations about genetic contamination. Enough, Daehyun said, standing up. I get it, you're telling us the galaxy is cruel, that nobody cares about anyone else, that humanity is walking into a place where compassion is seen as weakness. Yes, Ishara said. But also we are telling you something else. When we tested humanity, when we saw your response rates, when we felt what our agents felt being helped by you, something changed. She gestured and the screens showed Nari, the little girl Daehyun had helped, but not during the test, after. Nari was sitting in a room speaking to other alien agents. She was crying. I felt it, the screen showed Nari saying. When he wrapped his jacket around me, when he bought me that sweet drink, when he stayed with me even though he was tired and cold, I felt cared for, not because I had value, not because I could offer something, but just because I existed and needed help. Other agents appeared on the screens, all speaking similar words. She carried me like I mattered. He gave me his food like feeding me was more important than his own hunger. She walked with me for hours, talking to me, making me feel safe. Out of 10,000 agents, Torin said quietly, 9,012 reported emotional responses they could not explain. Many cried for the first time in their lives. Many questioned their civilization's values. Some requested to return to Earth, to study humans more, to understand this feeling of being cared for without condition. The humans didn't just pass our test, Ishara said. They changed the testers. Your compassion is not just unusual. It is transformative. It affects those who experience it. Daehyun sat back down slowly. What does that mean? It means the collective is in turmoil, Vekrin said. For 3,000 years we have operated on principles of efficiency and mutual benefit. Now a species appears that operates on completely different principles. Principles that seem to work, that create strong societies that may actually be better than ours. Some fear you, Torin said. Some hate you for exposing what we have lost. Some want to quarantine Earth before your ideas spread and destabilize our carefully maintained order. But some of us, Ishara said, her glow brightening, see hope. Hope that the galaxy can be more than contracts and calculations. Hope that we can remember what we have forgotten. Hope that humanity can teach us what our ancestors lost when they reached for the stars. Hyejin spoke up. What did the Karathi score on the compassion test? You said they were the moral heart of the collective. 54%, Torin said. We were proud of this number. It was the highest recorded, until now. And they only helped their own species, Soman said, understanding. Humanity helps everyone. Humans help people who aren't even human. She pointed at the screens showing the test results. That refugee ship you showed us, the one left to die. If humans had found them, we would have helped. We help whales trapped in ice. We help injured birds. We help trees by planting forests. We even help robots if they seem sad in movies. We cannot help ourselves. We see something suffering and we have to try to fix it. Exactly, Ishara said. And that terrifies some species. Because if that behavior spreads, if other species begin to question the efficiency model, if compassion becomes valued over profit, everything changes. Bongsik laughed, a bitter sound. You're telling us we're about to start a revolution without even meaning to? Perhaps, Vekrin said. Or perhaps you will be crushed by species who see your compassion as weakness to exploit. Or perhaps you will change nothing and simply become another member of the collective, learning to harden your hearts as you face galactic reality. That's what the choice is really about, Daehyun said slowly, understanding clicking into place. Not just whether we become ambassadors, but whether humanity keeps its compassion when it meets the stars, or loses it like everyone else did. Yes, Ishara said simply. The room fell silent. The four humans looked at each other, then at the aliens, then at the screens showing a galaxy full of species who had forgotten how to care. What happens if we say no? Hijin asked. If we choose to go home and forget? Then we wait, Torin said. Humanity will develop naturally. In 50 years, maybe 100, you will reach the stars on your own. We will make contact then, but you will face the galaxy without preparation, without understanding, without allies. And if we say yes? Soman asked. Then we prepare you, Ishara said. We teach you about the collective, about galactic politics, about the dangers you will face. And you teach us about compassion, about caring, about what we have lost. Together we try to change the galaxy. Together we try. The ship moved through space in ways that made Daehyun's head hurt. One moment they were orbiting Earth, the next they were somewhere else entirely. A massive station hung in the black, bigger than any city Daehyun had ever seen. Ships of 100 different designs docked at ports along its surface. Collective Station Harmony, Ishara said. One of our largest diplomatic and trade hubs. 20 million residents from 400 species. This is the galaxy humanity will join. They materialized on an observation deck. Through the transparent walls, Daehyun could see beings of every imaginable shape moving through the station. Some walked on 2 legs, some on 6, some flew. Some seemed to be made of light or liquid or crystal. It's beautiful, Somin whispered. It's lonely, Hyejin said quietly. And Daehyun realized she was right. Despite the crowds, nobody interacted. They moved past each other like water around rocks. No greetings. No acknowledgement. Each species kept to itself. This is normal, Torin said. We coexist but do not truly meet. Trade happens. Contracts are signed. But connection? Understanding? These are rare. Vekrin gestured to a large screen showing commodity prices and trade routes. This is what matters in the collective. Resources, technology, strategic advantage. Relationships are transactional. Help is contractual. Everything has a price. Daehyun watched a childlike creature trip and fall, its strange parcels scattered across the floor. Dozens of beings walked past without stopping. The child struggled to gather its things alone, making small, distressed sounds. Without thinking, Daehyun moved toward it. Ishira's hand on his shoulder stopped him. You cannot, she said gently. You are not here. This is only an observation projection. But someone needs to help, Daehyun said. Watch, Ishara said. Finally, a being stopped. It was tall and crystalline, light refracting through its body. It stood over the child, calculated something on a device, then picked up one parcel. It handed it to the child, then extended its other hand expectantly. The child gave it a small coin. The crystalline being nodded and walked away. The child continued gathering its things alone, crying softly. That is the collective, Vekrin said. Help can be purchased, but freely given? Almost never. Bongsik's hands clenched into fists. That's wrong. That is efficient, Vekrin replied. They moved through the station, seeing more of the same. Beings in distress ignored unless they could pay for help. Efficient but cold. Advanced but empty. The collective has achieved much, Torin said. We have eliminated major wars. We have shared technologies that improved billions of lives. We have explored thousands of worlds. But we have lost something essential. We have forgotten that beings matter beyond their utility. Humanity will either change this, Ishara said, or be changed by it. We do not know which. Suddenly, alarms blared through the observation projection. Red lights flashed across the station. Ishara's expression shifted from calm to urgent. What's happening? Hyejin asked. Ishara touched her interface. Her glow dimmed. Emergency on Europa. One of our mining operations. The projection shifted, showing Jupiter's ice moon. A collective facility sat on the surface, drilling deep into the ice. Warning symbols flashed across the screens. The drilling has awakened something, Ishara said, reading data that scrolled too fast for Daehyun to follow. Microbial life in the subsurface ocean. Dormant until now. They're registering as active, multiplying rapidly. Life, Soman said. Earth life? In our solar system? Apparently, Vekrin said, studying the screens. Interesting. We should collect samples before sterilization. Sterilization? Heejin's voice went sharp. You mean killing it? Of course, Vekrin said, like it was obvious. The mining operation cannot continue with biological contamination. Protocol requires sterilization of the site to protect operations and prevent spread. You can't, Heejin said. That's the first extraterrestrial life humanity has ever discovered. It's priceless. It's life. It's microbes, Vekrin said. No sentient. No technology. No value beyond scientific curiosity, which has already been noted for future study. The operation represents significant investment. The microbes do not. Daehyun felt something cold settle in his stomach. This was it. This was what the collective really was. Numbers and efficiency and value calculations. Life mattered only if it could be used. There must be another way, he said. Can't you move the operation? Mine somewhere else? Possible but expensive, Vekrin said, checking his interface. Cost analysis suggests sterilization is optimal solution. Crew is standing by for authorization. No, Heejin said firmly. You can't kill it. We can and will, Vekrin said. This is standard protocol. Why are you objecting? They are microbes. You kill billions on your body every day without concern. That's different, Heejin argued. How? Vekrin challenged. Because, Heejin struggled for words. Because these are the only ones. Because they're unique. Because their life in a place we thought was dead. Because they matter. They do not matter, Vekrin said flatly. They have no economic value. They have no military value. They have no consciousness to care about their own existence. The cost-benefit analysis is clear. Everything can't be reduced to costs and benefits, Bonksik said. Some things matter just because they exist. Like what? Vekrin asked, genuinely curious now rather than dismissive. Daehyun thought about the stray cat. About Nari on the bench. About Mrs. Park's groceries. About every small kindness he'd ever done that made no logical sense. Like everything, he said quietly. Like everything that lives and struggles and tries to survive. They all matter. Not because they're useful, but because they are. The four humans looked at each other. Some silent understanding passed between them. They all felt it. The wrongness of what was about to happen. The casual cruelty of efficiency. You wanted to know what humans are like, Selman said, her young voice steady. This is what we're like. We can't watch something die just because it's convenient. We can't let life be destroyed just because it costs too much to save. That's not who we are. Then who are you? Ishara asked, and there was something in her voice. Not mockery. Genuine curiosity. We're the ones who helped, Daehyun said. He thought about everything they'd shown him. The cold efficiency. The transactional relationships. The galaxy that had forgotten how to care. You said you wanted to understand human compassion. You said you tested us to see if we'd help when it cost us something. Well, this costs us. This costs our relationship with you. This costs our chance to join the collective easily. But we can't just stand here and watch you kill something because the numbers say it's optimal. You have no authority here, Vekrin said. But he didn't sound angry. He sounded fascinated. You cannot stop us. You are guests. Observers only. Then we're asking, Heejin said. Please, please don't kill them. Find another way. Save them. Ishira looked at the four humans for a long moment. Her swirling eyes moved between them, reading something in their faces. Then she turned to Vekrin and Torin. Call an emergency council session, she said. What? Vekrin looked shocked. For microbes? Ishara, this is absurd. We cannot call a council session for every biological contamination. This is not about the microbes, Ishara said. This is about the test. The real test. Not whether humans would help an individual in distress, but whether they would stand by their values when it costs them something real. When they have no power, when it would be easier to look away. She turned back to Daehyun and the others. You are not collective members. You have no voice in our decisions. Yet you speak anyway, knowing you might lose everything, knowing we might reject humanity entirely for questioning our protocols. You risk your species' future for microbes you will never see. Why? Because someone has to, Daehyun said simply. Because if we don't speak for things that can't speak for themselves, who will? Because that's what Nari was testing, wasn't it? Whether we'd help even when it's hard. Even when it costs us. Even when we get nothing back. Ishira's glow brightened until it was almost painful to look at. Yes, And you have passed a test I did not even know I was giving. Vekran, call the council. All members. Priority override. This will cause significant disruption, Vekran warned. Good, Ishara said. Disruption is exactly what the collective needs. Within minutes, the projection changed. They were in a vast chamber filled with beings from hundreds of species. Council members, each representing their worlds. The chamber buzzed with confusion and irritation. Emergency sessions were rare, called only for threats to collective security. Ishara stood in the center, the 4 humans beside her. Thousands of eyes in all their varied forms focused on them. Council members, Ishara began, I have called you here to witness something unprecedented. Humanity, not yet a member species, wishes to address the collective regarding mining operation protocol on Europa. The chamber erupted in confusion. Voices overlapped in dozens of languages. Unacceptable. Violation of procedure. They have no standing. They have moral standing, Ishara said, and her voice carried over the noise. And I propose we listen. Because what they have to say may change everything. The council chamber felt massive and intimidating. Taehyun stood with the other 3 humans surrounded by beings that could destroy Earth with a thought. His hands shook, but he forced himself to stand straight. Speak then, human, a voice boomed. It came from a being that looked like flowing liquid metal. Tell us why we should violate established protocol for your opinion. Taehyun looked at Hyejin, Bongsik, and Somin. They nodded at him. Somehow, without speaking, they'd chosen him as their voice. He took a breath and began. You tested my species, he said. You sent your people to Earth disguised as lost children, as injured elders, as hungry homeless. You wanted to know if we'd help. We did. 73% of the time we helped. And you were surprised. Murmurs ran through the council, some approving, some skeptical. But now I understand what really surprised you. Daehyun continued. It wasn't just that we helped. It was that we helped without calculating value, without measuring cost and benefit. We helped because someone needed help. That was enough reason. Inefficient, someone called out. Maybe, Daehyun agreed, but it's who we are. And right now there's life on Europa that needs help. Microbial life that woke up because of your mining. Life that never asked to be disturbed. Life that can't speak for itself. They are microbes, the liquid metal being said. Non-sentient. They have no economic or strategic value. They have the value of being alive, Hyejin said, stepping forward. Every life form on Earth started as something simple. Those microbes might be the beginning of something wonderful given time, or they might not. But they deserve the chance to exist. The cost of relocating the mining operation would be substantial, a crystalline being calculated. Current operation cost is 0.003% of annual collective budget. Relocation would increase that to 0.02%. Is 0.017% too much to pay for life? Bongsik asked. Silence fell over the chamber. The question hung in the air like something physical. Vekran spoke up from the side. The humans make an interesting philosophical point, but philosophy does not mine resources. We have contracts, investors, timelines. Moving the operation would cause significant complications. Then cause complications, Somin said, her young voice carried across the vast space. Because what's the alternative? You teach humanity that joining the collective means abandoning our values? That becoming advanced means becoming cruel? That reaching the stars means losing our souls? Soul, a being like living crystal said. Define this term. It's what makes you care about things that don't benefit you, Somin said. It's what makes you help someone even when it's hard. It's what makes you value life beyond its usefulness. And if you've lost that, maybe that's why you needed to test humanity in the first place. Maybe you were hoping we could remind you what you've forgotten. Torin, the Karathi speaker, stood. His wind chime voice filled the chamber. The human speaks truth that shames us. We formed the collective to prevent war, yes. To enable trade, yes. But in doing so, we reduced all relationships to transactions, all beings to their economic value. We maintain peace but not compassion. We maintain order but not care. The Karathi score highest on the compassion protocol, another council member said. Even you only reach 54%. How can humans who have not even reached the stars score 73%? Perhaps their data is flawed? Our data is verified across 10,000 tests, Ishara said firmly. The humans are not flawed, we are. We have optimized ourselves into coldness. Vekran stepped into the debate circle, which surprised Daehyun. The aggressive counselor spoke carefully now. I have studied humans for 3 years. I watched the tests. I calculated the numbers. And I must admit something. When our agents returned, many reported emotional experiences they could not explain. Being cared for without contract. Being valued without utility. This affected them deeply. He gestured at the screens surrounding the chamber. Images appeared. The agents who had been helped by humans speaking about their experiences. I was cold and this human gave me warmth from their own body, one said. I was hungry and this human gave me food they needed for themselves, said another. I was lost and this human stayed with me for hours asking nothing. The images continued. Agent after agent describing acts of kindness that made no sense by collective standards. And in each face and each voice there was something new, something that looked like wonder. 42 agents requested therapy after their missions, Vekran continued. They experienced emotional distress from being cared for. They felt guilt for deceiving their helpers. They felt something they called conscience, a sense that deceiving kindness was wrong even when orders permitted it. Weakness, someone called out. Perhaps, Vekran said, or perhaps evolution in a new direction. The collective has optimized for efficiency for 3,000 years. We have achieved much, but we have also created a civilization where children fall and no one helps unless paid, where refugees die in space because saving them costs too much, where life itself is valued only by its utility. He turned to face the council directly. I opposed human contact initially. I believed their compassion would make them victims. I still believe they will face exploitation. But I also now believe something else. The collective is dying, not from external threat but internal emptiness. We maintain peace through fear and contracts, not through connection. We have forgotten that beings can matter simply because they exist. The chamber erupted in debate. Some agreed. Many objected. Arguments flew in dozens of languages. Then a new voice spoke, so quiet that everyone stopped to hear it. The being was small, almost formless, pulsing with gentle light. I am eldest speaker of the mindful ones. We have not spoken in council for 600 years. We watch, we wait. We remember. Everyone focused on the small being. The mindful ones were ancient, one of the first species in the collective. They rarely participated in politics. We remember when the collective formed, the eldest speaker said. We remember the wars that birthed it. We remember species learning to coexist through necessity rather than desire. We have watched you optimize yourselves into efficiency. We have watched you lose the very thing that makes civilization worth having. The small being pulsed brighter. These humans, these new ones, they carry something precious. Not innocence, not ignorance, but choice. They choose compassion knowing it costs them. They choose care knowing they gain nothing. This is not weakness. This is strength of a kind we have forgotten. The eldest speaker floated toward Daehyun. Young human, you sat with a cold child for 3 hours. You gained nothing. You lost time, comfort, peace. Why? Daehyun thought about it. Really thought about it. Because she was scared and alone. Because I've been scared and alone. Because if I'd walked past her, I could have. But I wouldn't have liked who I was anymore. There, the eldest speaker said, turning back to the council. Do you hear it? He helps not just out of kindness to others, but out of respect for himself. He maintains his own sense of worth by acting worthily. This is integration of self and values we have lost. We are so efficient we no longer know who we wish to be beyond our functions. Ishara stepped forward. I call for a vote. The mining operation on Europa will either continue with sterilization as planned, or relocate at increased cost to preserve the microbial life. But this vote is not really about microbes. It is about what kind of collective we choose to be. One that calculates every decision by profit and loss, or one that considers values beyond economics. The humans have no vote, someone objected. No, Ishara agreed. But they have reminded us that we do. We can choose. Every day, every decision, we can choose efficiency or we can choose compassion. We can choose profit or we can choose principle. For 3,000 years we have chosen one path. Perhaps it is time to remember the other path exists. The vote was called. It took hours. Species argued, calculated, debated. The humans sat and waited, exhausted but unable to look away. Finally, the results appeared on the massive screens. The vote to relocate the Europa operation and preserve the microbial life passed. Barely. By less than 2% margin. But it passed. The chamber exploded in noise, some celebrating, some outraged, some simply shocked that the collective had chosen inefficiency over profit for the first time in living memory. Ishara returned to the humans. Her glow seemed different now, warmer somehow. It is done. The microbes live. The operation moves. And more importantly, the collective has chosen compassion over efficiency for the first time in centuries. Will it last? Hyejin asked quietly. I do not know, Ishara admitted. One vote does not transform a civilization. But it is a beginning, a crack in the wall we have built around ourselves, and cracks let light in. She knelt before them, bringing her height down to theirs. You 4 humans have done something remarkable. You have changed the galaxy without ships, without weapons, without technology. You have changed it simply by being who you are and refusing to accept that caring is weakness. What happens now? Bongsik asked. Now you must choose, Torin said, joining them. Will you become ambassadors? Will you help prepare humanity for contact while teaching the collective to remember compassion? It will not be easy. Many species will resist. Many will see you as threats to the order. But some will see you as hope, the eldest speaker added, floating near. Hope. The 6 months passed. Daehyun learned to speak Galactic Standard, the common language that most species used for trade and diplomacy. He learned about species histories, about the wars that nearly destroyed everything, about the careful balance of power that kept the peace. He learned protocols and customs and 1,000 ways different species said hello. But mostly, he taught. The collective set up cultural exchange programs. Daehyun and the other human ambassadors conducted workshops where they explained concepts that seemed simple to them, but were revolutionary to many species. Empathy, selfless action, caring for strangers. Some species dismissed them as naive, but others listened. A Vethrian merchant named Korvax attended one of Hyejin's workshops on medical ethics. She explained how human doctors took an oath to help all patients regardless of ability to pay, how hospitals couldn't turn away emergency cases even if they'd never be reimbursed. This is economically unsustainable, Korvax said. Maybe, Hyejin agreed, but it's morally necessary. Some things matter more than profit. Korvax left, shaking his head. But 2 weeks later, he contacted them. He'd started a charity providing medical supplies to refugee camps. It was small, inefficient, and gave him nothing tangible in return. But he couldn't stop thinking about those workshops. Couldn't stop wondering what kind of person he wanted to be. Stories like that multiplied. A Quarren military officer questioned orders to abandon civilians in a war zone. A Drexian scientist shared research freely instead of selling it. A Karathi teacher began including lessons about caring for other species, not just their own kind. Small changes, individual choices, but they spread like ripples in still water. Earth remained unaware of all this. The collective wasn't ready for open contact yet, and humanity wasn't ready either. But preparations began. Scientists found signals they'd missed before. Governments started talking quietly about first contact protocols. The world was slowly being prepared for the truth. Daehyun was allowed to visit home once a month. He couldn't tell anyone the truth. His cover story was that he'd been accepted into an international humanitarian program, working with refugee organizations around the world. His friends believed it. His mother was proud. She was doing better now. The collective had arranged for her to receive experimental treatment through a pharmaceutical trial. It was actually alien technology, carefully disguised. Her lungs were healing. She might have years left, not months. You look different, she said during one visit. They sat in her small apartment drinking tea. Older somehow. Like you've seen things, I have, Daehyun said carefully. Things I never imagined. Are you happy? She asked, the question mothers always ask. Daehyun thought about it. He was exhausted, overwhelmed, homesick, but also fulfilled in ways he'd never been before. Yes, he said. I'm helping people. That makes me happy. Good, his mother said, patting his hand. That's all I ever wanted for you, to find purpose. He returned to the collective embassy ship, a massive vessel that orbited Earth cloaked from detection. The 4 human ambassadors had their own quarters now, designed to feel like home. Earth books and food and music. Small comforts in the vastness of space. They'd become close, the 4 of them, bonded by shared experience that no one else could understand. They ate meals together, talked late into the night, supported each other through homesickness and culture shock. Do you ever wonder if we're doing the right thing? Sumin asked one evening. She was struggling with her coursework in galactic politics. Maybe we're changing things that shouldn't be changed. Every day, Hyejin admitted. But then I remember that refugee ship. The one Vekran showed us, left to die because helping cost too much. I remember thinking that if humans had found them, we would have helped. We wouldn't have calculated the cost. We would have just helped. That's what makes us human, Bongsik said. He was carving a piece of wood, a habit he'd picked up to calm his nerves. We care even when it doesn't make sense, even when it costs us. That's not weakness. That's who we are. The moment was interrupted by alarms. Red lights flashed through the ship. Ishara's voice came over the communication system. All ambassadors to the command center. Emergency situation, they ran. The command center was chaos when they arrived. Screens showed a space station under attack, ships firing weapons, people evacuating in panic. What's happening? Daehyun asked. The Drexian Empire, Vekran said grimly. He was working multiple control panels at once. They've attacked Neutral Station Beacon 7, civilian population of 40,000, multiple species. It's a major diplomatic incident. Why? Hyejin asked. Unclear, Ishara said. Strategic position, perhaps. Or provocation. The Drexians have been aggressive lately, testing boundaries. Daehyun watched the screens. People were dying down there. Families separated. Children scared. It reminded him of Nari that cold night in Seoul. People in need, terrified and alone. What's the collective doing? He asked. Military forces are being deployed, Torin said. Protocol dictates we counter the Drexian attack, regain control of the station and establish strategic superiority. What about the civilians? Soman asked. Evacuation is underway, Vekran said. But it's secondary priority. Military objectives take precedence. We'll evacuate who we can while securing the station. Bongsik stared at him. Secondary priority? There are 40,000 people down there. And strategic considerations that affect billions, Vekran replied. If we focus on evacuation, the Drexians will fortify their position. It will cost more lives in the long run to dislodge them. Or you could prioritize getting people out, Hyejin said. Save lives first. Worry about strategy after. Tactically unsound, Vekran said. The Drexians would escape with valuable intelligence and equipment. They'd learn they can attack with minimal consequence. Daehyun felt something crystallize in his mind. This was it, the moment that mattered. The choice between efficiency and compassion playing out on a massive scale. You tested us, he said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. 6 months ago, you tested humanity to see if we'd help when it cost us something. Now you have the same test. Will you choose the efficient path that prioritizes strategy over lives? Or will you choose the compassionate path that saves as many people as possible, even if it cost you tactical advantage? Silence fell over the command center. It's not that simple, Vekran said, but his voice lacked certainty. It is that simple, Daehyun said. Every person down there is someone's Nari, someone's lost child scared and alone. You can calculate the strategic costs all you want, but can you live with yourself if you choose military objectives over their lives? Ishara looked at the screens, then at the humans, then at her fellow counselors. He's right. The humans have been teaching us about compassion for 6 months. Now is the moment we decide if we've been listening or just humoring them. This could set precedent, Torin warned. Prioritizing civilian evacuation over military objectives goes against 3,000 years of protocol. Good, Hyejin said. Maybe it's time for new protocols. Ishara made a decision. Open a channel to all collective military forces in the area. Priority override. Ishara, think about this, Vekran said. I have, she replied. For 6 months I have thought about little else. Open the channel. The communication channel opened. Ishara's voice went out to dozens of ships, thousands of soldiers. This is Envoy Coordinator Ishara. I am issuing new tactical priorities for the Beacon 7 situation. Primary objective is now civilian evacuation. All ships with transport capability are to focus on rescue operations. Military engagement is secondary. Repeat, civilian lives are primary priority. The channel exploded with objections. Commanders argued. Tacticians calculated the costs. But Ishara's authority held. She was a council member, one of the highest ranks in the collective. Execute, she said firmly. That is an order. The military forces obeyed. On the screens, Daehyun watched ships change tactics. Instead of engaging the Drexian forces directly, they focused on getting people off the station. Transport ships docked at every available port. Smaller craft ferried people from damaged sections. Even military vessels opened their bays to refugees. The Drexians, confused by the response, began withdrawing. They'd expected a fight, a chance to prove their strength. Instead, they found themselves watching a massive rescue operation. Fighting ships focused on saving lives rather than engaging in battle made them look foolish for attacking civilians. Within hours, 38,000 people were evacuated. 2,000 were already dead from the initial attack. It was a tragedy, but it could have been so much worse. More importantly, something else happened. Other species watched the rescue operation, saw the collective choose lives over strategy, saw them coordinate the largest civilian evacuation in centuries, and they saw it was possible, that caring for people could be a priority, even in war. Ships from non-collective species arrived to help. Traders, pirates, even a few Drexian defectors who disagreed with their empire's aggression. Everyone helping, working together, united by the simple goal of saving lives. "This is unprecedented," Torrin said, watching the screens with something like awe. "I have never seen cooperation like this. Species that barely tolerate each other working side by side.